Were you aware? I was standing in my kitchen a short while ago, looking at the same stack of dishes that I had been avoiding for days. I was mentally exhausted, not simply exhausted. It all sounded loud. The disarray, the incomplete tasks, and the clutter hiding in every nook and cranny. Why can something as basic as preparing dinner feel so difficult? I kept asking myself. Laziness wasn't the point of that moment. It had to do with maxing out. It wasn't safe in my house. Another place that demanded more of me than I could provide. I started decluttering at that point. I just needed something to make me feel better, not for Instagram or aesthetics. Surprisingly, it was successful. I was more relieved than I thought when I cleared up one counter. I gained momentum from it. I gradually felt as though I could breathe normally again. You're not alone if your mind feels as disorganized as your house at the moment. You can start small with the help of this video. One feasible shift at a time, please. Without requiring perfection, I'll show you practical techniques that have helped me transition from turmoil to serenity. Let's begin in your kitchen, in a peaceful place. Just a little peace, no pressure. Let's start with the first one. I believed that I had to complete everything or nothing. I used to think that decluttering had to be a one or nothing proposition. I simply didn't start. If I couldn't set aside a whole weekend to organize every cabinet or empty a closet. Furthermore, nothing changed, because I never possessed that enchanted time block. What was the real help? The reverse strategy. Take it easy at first. A drawer you secretly despise yet open every day. The haphazard shelf that gathers items you don't use. Something manageable enough to be completed in a single show episode. When I did that, this is what transpired. I emptied a single drawer, threw away some broken pens and group chargers, and cleaned the bottom one morning while I waited for my tea to steep. I had an odd sense of momentum after about 12 minutes, like, okay, I can do this. I haven't pursued perfect timing since. I don't wait for motivation spikes or free weekends. I simply choose one minor victory every day and allow it to grow. Try giving your brain only one option if it's telling you everything or nothing. That's how genuine change endures. And tomorrow's video is for you if you're desiring even easier habits, like barely trying easy. I'll be giving you 10 easy ways to keep your house tidy with very little work. Unaware of it, you may already be performing some. Let's go on to number 2, where clutter isn't just about possessions, but also about how your room feels when you first enter it. Let's go on to number 2 now. Get rid of the things your eyes are stumbling over. Not all clutter requires physical space. It requires focus. Even though your hands don't touch it, your eyes are on it every single day. Consider this. Is there an area in your house that seems to be visually distracting? A magnet-covered refrigerator door? A counter crammed with items that have no real place? A shelf that doesn't look like it belongs in your home, but rather like a storage unit? You can accomplish this little thing. Make it quiet in one of those noisy areas. Remove everything from your refrigerator. The corner of your counter that always gathers items should be cleared. Clean it, on purpose. Leave it mostly empty. After doing this, I realized that I was no longer mentally preparing myself whenever I entered a room. It wasn't until they were gone that I realized how much those small mounds were screaming at me. Being minimalist wasn't the point. Making the room feel less demanding was the goal. This type of clarity focuses on how it feels to live there, rather than how it seems. Let's then discuss why extra isn't always beneficial, particularly when it comes to your daily tools. Third, having extra stuff does not make life easier. It frequently makes things more difficult. I eventually came to the realization that I was keeping extras of commonplace products in case they went bad. A drawer full of partially used notepads, additional mixing bowls, and backup water bottles. Although they made every drawer more difficult to access and every shelf seem more crammed, I convinced myself that they were helpful. I assumed that having more meant being ready. In reality, though, I needed less to handle. This is what was helpful. I picked out the things. The notebook is the sharpest knife, and I genuinely use and adore it. In fact, I go for the one leak-proof water bottle. Everything else was placed in a spares box. Out of view, out of tension. I hardly ever open the package again, which is funny. Risk isn't the reason to let go of luxuries. It has to do with trust. Believing that what you now possess is sufficient. If you ever do require a second one, you'll figure it out. And believing that enjoying your environment rather than worrying about backups is a better use of your energy. We now arrive at number 4. When the items you're holding on to aren't worthless, but they're also not truly enhancing your quality of life. Fourth, some items aren't clutter since they serve no purpose. Since they are no longer useful to you, they are clutter. I once had a shelf full with cookbooks, some of which were exquisite and beautifully gifted, and some of which I hadn't opened in years. I always felt a weird mixture of admiration and guilt when I looked at them. I felt I should keep them because they weren't rubbish, but they also didn't support my true lifestyle. That's the challenging type of clutter, the one that seems to belong there. This is what enabled me to let go. Would I buy this again today? I asked myself. Not 10 years ago. Not because of who gave it to me, but because of who I am now. I was given permission when the response was no dote. I donated the other cookbooks and kept the one that I really use. My tea, a tiny speaker, and a small plant are now stored on the shelf. Not who I used to be, but things that fit the beat of my current lifestyle. Giving up something doesn't imply that it wasn't worthwhile. It just indicates that it has already provided you with what you required. We'll examine a more subdued form of clutter next, the kind that wastes your time every day without screaming. Let's continue. The silent clutter that infiltrates your day without your knowledge is the subject of number 5. The drawer next to the cooker was the only one I had in the kitchen. Although it didn't appear very disorganized, I had to move items around each time I opened it in order to get a fresh towel. Batteries, outdated takeaway menus, a candle that I received years ago, and pieces of everything else were all there. Before I realized it irritated me every single day. It didn't seem like a huge deal. I just threw everything out one evening while supper was cooking, disposed of the trash, moved the batteries to the tool area, located a small box for the small items, and replaced only the items I really used. To be honest, it felt great. I didn't have to dig when I opened that drawer the following morning. It was done, silent, and easy. You experience that kind of wind every day, but no one else does. In number 6, we will discuss items that are not readily visible, such as your charging station or toothbrush holder, and why they may be subtly causing you tension. Sixth, even if something isn't untidy, it nevertheless gives your room a strange vibe. I kept this large dish rack next to the sink for a very long time. It gave the impression that the entire counter was cluttered, even when it wasn't filled. The toothbrushes in that old cup that never stayed clean, or the phone chargers spilling off the counter's edge, are examples of the same thing. It didn't feel tranquil, but it wasn't turmoil either. Do these items really need to sit out like this? I wondered one day. I replaced the toothbrush cup with one that had a cover, placed the dish rack beneath the sink, and found a little tray to hold the charger. It wasn't a big or expensive adjustment, but it made the space feel different. I wasn't always staring at things. Somehow, having more empty space allowed my brain to relax. Things don't always need to be thrown out. You just have to put them away sometime. Next up, I'll show you how to let go of things without second-guessing every small choice you make. The 7th lesson is that you don't have to make all of your decisions at once. I used to just freeze when I stood there with an old whisk, a cracked bowl, or a mug that I hadn't used in years. I would immediately return it to its original location, since I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep it, but also didn't want to regret letting it go. I kept getting stuck, because that kept happening. Then I made a new attempt. I picked up a box, scrawled "not sure yet" on the top, and began filling it with whatever I wasn't sure about. Just a method to put it on hold for the time being, without any pressure or important decisions. 1 month later, I would tick the box. And for the most part, I didn't miss anything in it. I came to the realization that decluttering isn't about making the right decisions at the right time. It's about allowing yourself space. Everything can feel lighter if you put a little distance between you and the choice. Don't push yourself to declutter if you feel stuck every time. Simply give your brain an alternative. Not quite yet. In relation to space, the 9th lesson covers a topic we frequently ignore. Even when our organization appears tidy, it can still be draining. The 7th lesson is that being well organized does not always translate into comfort. For a while, I believed that I would feel at last at ease after organizing everything into boxes, drawers, and labels. And it looked fantastic for a time. However, something remained strange. I continued to spend excessive amounts of time rearranging when things weren't ideal, searching through baskets with labels, and putting things away. I realized at that point that I was organizing clutter rather than getting rid of it. I stepped back as a result. I questioned if I really needed all of this before purchasing another storage bin. Could I give up some items rather than attempting to properly store them? I emptied a huge basket of unnecessary kitchen appliances that I hardly used, disposed of duplicates, let certain things go for a while. All of a sudden, I didn't require additional containers. I simply required less items. Things began to feel easier after that. Rather than taking over your life, organizing should enhance it. Even if it doesn't appear Pinterest perfect, having fewer items means having less to handle. Consider deleting rather than rearranging the containers if you've been attempting to improve your area by purchasing more. Furthermore, we don't discuss the 9th lesson enough: the effects of clutter on our neighbors. The 7th lesson is that clutter affects more than just you. Everyone in the house is impacted. I thought I was accomplishing everything at one point. Cleaning up was my responsibility. It was me who reminded everyone of the location. And when no one helped or assisted incorrectly, it was me who became irritated. In actuality, however, it was more difficult for others to join in when our home systems were more complex. It makes sense that they didn't want to put things away if every cabinet was full, or every drawer had a trick to close. I therefore made things simpler. I tidied up additional dishes, that it wouldn't feel difficult to unload the dishwasher. I ensured that the children could truly get what they required. I let go of the notion that perfection was necessary for something to be proper. And a change occurred. People began lending a hand more because I made things easier, not because I asked louder. The energy shifts in a more tranquil setting, and the house no longer feels like it's all on you when everyone feels like they can contribute. Let's go on to the last lesson now. A reminder that while progress may not always appear significant, when it is genuine, it feels significant. The 10th lesson: little victories are more significant than you may imagine. Weeks passed during which I failed to complete a room. I didn't do any wardrobe organizing. I didn't even go near the pile of donations. Perhaps, however, I tidied up a drawer, finally disposed of that broken dish I had been holding on to out of habit, or simply put everything away on the nightstand before going to bed. And what do you know? That mattered because I gained trust each time I praised myself for the little things. I began observing what was already effective, and stopped looking for the ideal moment to complete everything. Not all progress is loud. At one corner that has been cleaned for a week straight, a floor you didn't have to clear before cleaning, or less laundry piled up are some examples. That's what improves the atmosphere in your house. 100 small adjustments that eventually sum up, rather than one large purge. It's sufficient if you only worked on one drawer, one bag, or one shelf today. Indeed, it is. My life didn't alter immediately, but gradually. One drawer here, one shift there. Decluttering allowed me to breathe easier. It gave me the impression that I was finally living in my own house, rather than having to deal with a mess. These 10 lessons should give you something to cling to, a starting point. Or perhaps just an excuse to try again, but with more tact. Keep in mind that this isn't about perfecting your area or doing everything perfectly. Making a home that feels like it fits your requirements, speed, and current life is the goal. It's sufficient if even one item from this list helped to lighten your day. I really appreciate you being here. I sincerely hope that was useful. And tomorrow I'll see you again. We're discussing 10 indolent practices that will help you maintain a tidy home with virtually minimal work.